Hello and welcome to our second in our series of Loveland Opera Theatre vlogs. Today we are looking at backstage at the opera, and we are truly looking backstage at the opera because the guests that I have with me are the people that work backstage. Most of them don't ever get seen by the audience unless maybe they're seeing them when they walk in at the lighting booth or something like that. But other than that, the majority of their jobs happen truly backstage. And it's said that the tech personnel in the opera and theater worlds, that if they do their jobs really well, no one should actually notice that they did their jobs because they create magic in a way that is not always noticeable. But today we want to bring them to the forefront. We want to bring them onto the stage and have a conversation about what it's like to be the backstage part of creating opera. We couldn't do the job of opera without these great tech people, and these are not just the only tech people that we have, but these are currently some of our tech people that work with Loveland Opera. And so I'm going to give you just a little background about them right now. Lexi Holtzer has served as the production stage manager for Loveland Opera Theatre since 2018. Lexi has been unseen in the Colorado theater scene for 6 years now, and that's how she likes it. She has previously worked at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts, Breckenridge Backstage Theater, Ovation West Performing Arts, Cherry Creek Theater, Vintage Theater, Town Hall Arts Center, and Opera Colorado. And we are, of course, really pleased to have her with us at Loveland Opera Theatre. Peter Muller has served in many capacities at Loveland Opera Theatre, including conductor, set designer, and lighting designer. He has conducted, directed, and designed over 100 productions for Colorado audiences, including Denver Center Theater Company, Front Range Music Theater, Candlelight Dinner Playhouse, Carousel Dinner Theater, Open Stage Theater, Longmont Theater Company, Fort Collins Children's Theater, and the Greeley Stampede Troupe. Peter helped open the Candlelight Dinner Playhouse and served in many capacities, including owner, director, designer, and conductor for 4 seasons prior to leaving for his current position as director of events for CSU's University Center for the Arts. Peter recently directed the Northern Colorado premiere of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which garnered 9 Broadway.com Denver Awards, including Best Production of a Musical, Best Set Design, and Best Director of a Musical. This past February, Peter conducted the Greeley Philharmonic Orchestra for his production of Shrek, the musical, at Montfort Concert Hall in Greeley. We're thrilled to have Peter with us today. Davis Sibley has served as costume designer for Loveland Opera Theatre for 7 seasons. His credits include designing costumes for Così fan tutte, The Merry Widow, The Merry Wives of Windsor, Pirates of Penzance, Kismet, Mikado, and La Boheme. Sibley has also served as costume designer for Chicago, My Fair Lady, Funny Girl, and the Colorado premiere of The Hunchback of Notre Dame at Evergreen Corral. In the Heights, Grapes of Wrath, Angels in America, and A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum for Vintage Theater, as well as Heartland Opera Theater's production of Swore Angelica and Johnny Skiki, and Annie Warbucks at Candlelight Dinner Playhouse. He has also served as wardrobe for Pensacola Opera's productions of La Boheme and Die Zauberflöte. Sibley is a 2-year consecutive winner of the Broadway Denver Awards for his costume designs for My Fair Lady and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. We are also thrilled to have with us Juliana Bishop Hoch, founder and executive director of Loveland Opera Theatre. So thank you so much for being with us. Welcome. And Peter, I want to start with you, and I want to ask you a little bit about, one of the things that I said in your bio is you are not only just a lighting and set designer, but you actually help to run a theater and manage a theater. And so I want to know from you a little bit about what it's been like to deal with these COVID days and what it's like to try to manage and deal with all of the regulations and protocols that come with having a theater during COVID times.
Well, one of the things that was most apparent with Loveland Opera Theatre was our gala that was scheduled last year that we started to get into, but unfortunately there was a COVID positive case at the Rialto, and they of course followed guidelines, and we had to shut down for that week. So we had some work that was done. And then you just postpone it and pick it up. My other job is at the CSU. So not only were we having to follow county guidelines, we follow CSU guidelines. At CSU, we can't have more than 10 singers at one time. They can't sing for more than 30 minutes at one time. So there are a lot of guidelines that have affected us there, mostly and sadly in respect to no live audiences. So just like our gala for Loveland Opera Theater was virtual, everything we're doing at CSU is virtual. So I'm thankful that we get to do that. And I was really thankful for Loveland Opera Theater that that was the first time I got to be back in not only an artistic role, but also with other performers and artists creating art that was really meaningful to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Lexi, I'd like to, as a person who works both in the opera world and the musical theater world in the Denver arts, I'd love to know just a little bit more, or actually Colorado arts, I should say, because you work all over Colorado. I'd love to know a little bit more about what it's been like to be a tech person during COVID times and trying to deal with jobs being lost and shows being canceled, as well as just trying to stay alive as an artist and figure all of that out.
Yeah, so I had a lot of shows that were postponed, and I think that they may be done in the next season for certain theaters. I worked on the Loveland Jubilee, and like he said, we got postponed once, and then we did it, but we had rehearsals and everyone is masked and you follow strict protocols. Right now, I'm working at Town Hall, and we are doing a show literally in a plexiglass bubble. So it's You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. So it's a small show. There's only 10 of us in a rehearsal and we're all masked. And then we get weekly COVID tests. And that continues throughout the run. And so when they actually are acting during tech and in performances, all the people in the bubble are not wearing masks. And then we have socially distanced audience, so we can only fit about 60 people. I want to say that Town Hall can normally fit 150 to 200, so it's definitely like sized down quite a bit. And then we also have options for streaming the show.
Awesome. Managing all of these COVID protocols and trying to make live theater happen is definitely for everyone a struggle right now. So now I'd like to take a moment to talk about what each of you do, but I thought it might be fun, instead of having you talk about your jobs, which sometimes is weird to just talk about what you do, I thought I'd have one of you talk about somebody else's job, and then you can check and see how accurate they were. So Davis, I'm going to start with you. I want you to let our audience know a little bit about what it's like to be a stage manager. What does Lexi do that helps our opera run?
The best way to describe it is it's like herding cats. You are constantly talking to people, getting them to where they need to be, calling places. Really, the stage manager is really the backbone. She or he really controls the flow of everything. So there's a huge weight on their shoulders to make sure you start on time, to make sure your lead principal singer is at places when they're supposed to be. It's a huge responsibility because everything falls on their shoulders to, like I said, to get it going and keep it moving. And if a crisis pops up, that's what they're dealing with. And there's just so much for them to have to do and manage and maintain and keep going. I mean, no matter what, it's nonstop. So I can only imagine how tired they are at the end of a night just from having to do that.
I think it's a pretty good description. Lexi, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think the way that I generally describe stage managing is that I am in charge of the communication and everyone's like feeling of safety. I feel like I have a lot to do with, if something's not safe, I want them to tell me right away. So yeah, I think Davis described it pretty perfectly.
Awesome.
I'm very tired at the end of the night.
Definitely. All right, and now Lexi, it's your turn. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about, now Peter does two jobs for us. He does lighting design and set design. So if you want to give some, they interchange in the sense that they cross over on each other some, but they are two separate jobs, usually or oftentimes done by different people in companies. So do you want to give a shot at trying to describe what he does?
Sure. So after we pick a show, then I would think the first thing that Peter would start working on is set. So he would talk with you and come up with an idea for it. You know, if it want, like with Cozy, we were very minimal, you know, just some set pieces. And then we used the lighted wall. So, you know, come up with, do we want it to be really minimal or do we want it to be a big set? You know, do we need a lot of pieces that stay on stage and turn into something else? You know, what do we need for the show? And so designs it and then has to, you know, build it. I don't really, I don't know how the sets get built as much. But and then as far as lighting, you know, you also talk to the director, figure out what their thoughts are, and any big moments you want to highlight. And then Peter would be in charge of the hang. So getting lights hung, moved to where he needs them to go. And then there's a focus so that you can focus the lights for spots and whatnot, specials, and then writing cues to give to me. And then after he writes the cues and gives them to me, then he also operates the light board. Peter does a lot.
I think in the end we will find out that all the tech people do a lot. But Peter, what do you think? And maybe you can fill in how those sets get built.
Absolutely, she hit it on the head. There you go. No, she's absolutely right. Well, let me touch about getting sets built. I can't cut straight. I've tried that before. I've tried working on my sets and helping out, and they shoo me away. That is definitely a talent I don't have. It is actually quite difficult for a theater without a home that with a construction area to build sets, because those are few and far between. And oftentimes you have to build them far enough in advance to get them done, but there's no place to store them. So, and also the Rialto is rather tricky because it's being a vintage venue, access to it, and we can't just back up a 53-foot trailer and unload a set, and that. So we, building the set, we've been relying recently on the LED screen, which is a great thing to have in our bag of tricks because we can change sets instantly and without much money. So building sets, but I did want to touch on the fact that of aligning the set designer, that I think that it's really is taking the director's vision and then dashing it down to what actually we can do, and dashing all their hopes of what they'd really like to see.
Well, and also reminding them that they have a budget they have to stay within, right?
That is I mean, that's quite true. I mean, you look at, let's say, a dinner theater that does a show for 2 or 3 months. That one set, you divide it by how many performances, that the cost per performance is this amount. You take what we do and we maybe have 8 performances or so. That set is much more costly to this company than a company that does 2 months worth of performances.
Yeah, it's definitely a big difference. And most opera companies do smaller amounts of performances than theater companies, unless you're like the Metropolitan Opera, because most opera companies don't perform in their own home, which is one of the large challenges. We're lucky to have a beautiful space like the Rialto Theater. So Peter, now you're going to take a stab at what it's like to be a costume designer. What do you think about that?
Well, let's see what I can do. I do know I've been told by other costume designers as a director that I don't speak the same language as they do. And the joke was, I have no idea what water taffeta is. But I would say that a costume designer is needing to represent the text of the script and represent that in giving a visual representation of time and place, as well as making every body type look great on a budget about this big.
What do you think, Davis? Is that accurate?
That's pretty much accurate. Yeah. The big thing for the costumer, like Peter said, is the authenticity of the time period that the director's going for. I mean, that's the big thing for us as costumers, is to make sure we get the performers looking like they belong in the 1800s or the 1950s, based off of cut of clothing or undergarments or hats, hair pieces, anything like that. And it's really working with the director to find out, to start, what he or she's vision is. You know, what time period are we setting it in? You know, what actions are going to be taking place? You know, what she's going to be doing a cartwheel, so we can't have her in a tight skirt. You know, it's those kind of things, working with the director to see what his vision is, or her vision, and moving forward and making sure we make the performers look like they belong in that specific era or that time period.
Great. I want to get back to the kind of creating a world in just a minute, but before we do, Juliana, I'd love for you to talk just a little bit about what it's like for a small company like Loveland Opera to have really talented tech people and how much they add to our shows.
I think that a company is only as wonderful as the professionals and the directors that help create in the organization. And we've been very, very lucky with Loveland Opera to have the best. You know, the best stage director, the best conductor, the best costumer, the best lighting designer who makes us all look beautiful. And of course, the best stage manager to make sure that we're all safe. And so the company is only as good as the people that work for it. And I've been very blessed to have top-notch artistic director, technical director, lighting designer, costume designer, stage manager, etc., etc. Very, very blessed.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the worlds. You know, as I'm looking back at the productions we do, because I'm pulling pictures and videos for these vlogs, I am reminded of how many worlds we have taken people to in over the number of years that I've been with Loveland Opera. And opera, the great thing about it is it transforms us to so many different and varied worlds. You know, we've been everywhere from Baghdad in the early thousands to China and Japan to France. There's just been so many different places that we've taken our audiences. So Davis, how do costumes help to create the world and the location of where we're at? Most people, I think, would think that the sets really are the only thing that does that, but the costumes are so important to helping to create that. How does that work?
I mean, and ever since the dawn of time, clothing has defined an era. It defines a location. It really sets apart where you are, what social class you are, where you fall in the hierarchy of a social class. You know, the more extravagant, the higher you are, the rattier and shabbier your clothes, the lower on the social scale you fall. So with that and with the design, you want to make sure you accurately portray each character in the social class that they're supposed to be in, and also make sure the cut of the clothing is, you know, important, the foundation garments that they wear. I'm a big stickler on that. You know, the girls make fun of me a lot of the times because I'll put them in corsets, and it's, you know, that's what they wore, and it changes your posture, it changes your attitude, it changes how you carry yourself, and you know, you won't have them hunching over because they can't, because they're wearing a corset. So they carry, their body language is different. It's how they move, and with costumes that's important. It really sets the stage for where something is taking place.
So Peter, the sets also help with location, but I think setting and lighting also can help the audience kind of understand how we feel about what's going on. They can really also give us a lot of atmosphere and emotion. Can you talk about how, in addition to helping us know where we're at in the setting of it, how it goes farther into those areas?
Yes, absolutely. I would like to comment first that with Davis, The first time the first time I worked with Davis, I wasn't a director. I was, I think, set lighting. And I was just amazed at the quality of costumes he could create on an incredibly small budget. I've never seen anyone else do that. And they weren't cheap looking or anything. It was just absolutely amazing, Davis. And I'm always in awe of you.
Thank you.
Truly, very detail oriented. And I think that as a costumer and an actor and then a director, I have seen the costumes, as Tim was alluding to, make the character. That in rehearsals, that the actor didn't quite have it. There was just something missing. And once they put on that costume, it just elevated their performance. So how incredibly important costumes are. And so with sets and lights, I think that's also the same way. Not so much to elevate maybe an actor's performance, because the joke is actors can never find their light. So what are you going to do? But to help create a sense of mood and focus of what the action is. The Rialto, you were mentioning, Tim, to us earlier prior to this broadcast, that about technical aspects of the Rialto and things like that. I've worked at the Lincoln Center, which has a huge amount of lights. I've worked at Montfort Concert Hall, huge amounts of lights, huge spaces. And then you get to the Rialto Theater, small space, small amounts of light. In fact, there really isn't a place to hang another lighting instrument in that place. So it's been great the last couple of years that the City of Loveland and the Rialto Theater has had focus on upgrading their technical capabilities from standard lighting that is just, you have to put a colored gel in it to change lights, to change the color. But you can't change that color during the show, so you're stuck with one color. Now, with the electronic lights, computerized lights, we can change, we have virtual colors, which is brilliant to work with. I know as a director, you're quite, I don't want to say demanding, because you never demand. You say, this is what I would like and what I'd like to work towards, and then we'll see what we are able to do. But I also want to comment, I think that you are a director that also loves concepts. And I think, I'm not sure if that comes out of the world of opera, that some of these productions were written longer ago than maybe the world of musical theater. I mean, what can you do with the Sound of Music to give it a concept? But the use of color on stage is very important, as it also relates to costuming. We've got to work together on that. So I'm very grateful that the Rialto Theater has the intelligent lighting with the colors that we can do. Not sure if I answered your question all the way, but
I think you got a good start on it. So I'm gonna push this further. Oh, Davis, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on something that Peter had said when he was talking about the new lighting and the richness of the colors and things like that. We actually have a friend who was touring in Wicked, and she met us one night for dinner, and I was like, don't you need to get back to put makeup on and getting makeup and getting, she was like, no, because of the new technology with lighting, we really can go on pretty much in street makeup, a little bit heavier, not the traditional pancake makeup, the thick, heavy stuff. She said, because of all the new lighting, we don't have to spend the amount of time putting on the heavier makeup and, really going in depth on that. She said, we pretty much can just go on in street makeup because the lighting has improved so much that you don't need all of the real heavy makeup that you had to have in the past.
I have a question for Davis. Davis, how do you determine the color palette of the costumes? How does that evolve, and what goes into that?
Really, once I talk to Tim or the director, whoever it is, we kind of get an idea of what era it's going to be set in. And believe it or not, just like today, there are color palettes that were predominant in certain eras that were less predominant in others. Pattern wise, the same thing. the texture of lace or beading or tassels hanging from costumes. Once we kind of determine that, I will go out and I've got reference books. I, search the internet, and try to find what those color palettes were, or the designs, or the cuts of fabrics of that time, and really try to match it as closely as possible. And in today's day and age, I mean, I'm very fortunate to be able to find a lot of fabrics and trims that can be used and represent those time periods that match up almost perfectly with them. So, and really just color palettes too. It's, what is the director, does he want a certain family group in a certain color? So we'll vary let's say the family's all in greens. So we'll vary the shades of greens for those, just kind of based off what if he wants. We try to work the best we can and get him what we can out of the resources we have.
So I want to get back to costuming and concept of that in just a minute. I want to head with Peter back. We were talking about concepts and with technology, and about 10 years ago was the first time I worked with you on a production with Loveland Opera of HMS Pinafore. And I gave you an interesting challenge that I wanted to see if we could use some technology. Now, the technology we are able to use today is a video wall that's an LED screen wall. But at that point, we were only able to have access to a screen and a projector. And I said, I want to do a concept that has a bit of a comic look, maybe even inspired a little bit by the great British comedians. The name just went out of my head. What is it? Monty Python. Sorry, Monty Python. And see also if the set could actually be a character in the show. And I don't know if anybody had ever asked you to have the set actually be character in the show before, but I gave you that challenge. And I want to watch just a quick excerpt from a little bit of the overture that we staged of that, in which the set truly is both setting the setting of the show and being a character in the show. One of the important things we learn in the show is that the crew of the HMS Pinafore, which is a boat, and they're sailors that work in the military, they're obsessed with cleanliness. And so I was trying to have you help me teach the audience this lesson even before we really started singing in the show. And so that's what you helped with. So let's take a quick look at a small excerpt from that scene. probably the first opera director brave enough to have pooping birds in their overture. So Peter, talk a little bit about when a director asks you to make the set a character in the show. What is that like?
Well, I think it's great fun. I had a set designer once, as I was a line designer. She said, "I've given you the best set design ever. It's all black." It's like, no, all white for a line designer. And what is amazing is that was all done with PowerPoint. Those were all PowerPoint slides. So if you've ever created a PowerPoint, each one of those, what were they, pigeons, whatever, seagulls, was an individual object I had to track, and it was PowerPoint. Now I do everything in Premiere Pro, a little bit more professional. But it's great fun because usually the set just has to be serviceable. The Sound of Music, for example. I love Sound of Music because if you've ever done a Rodgers and Hammerstein show, the script gives you absolutely everything. The mother abbess enters the left door, crosses to desk at center, sits with her left arm. She gestures for Maria. It's all there. You either just have to try to ignore that and create your own world, or you're just kind of, I don't know, stuck with that. But to be given the opportunity to do something as creative as that was great fun for me.
Awesome. All right, Lexi, we're going to get back to you for just a minute. So we were talking about sets and costumes and lighting, and although those are all great things that add a lot to the performance and the audience would feel lost without those things, they also add some challenges to your world, as there are set changes and costume changes and things like that. And also sometimes sets can be unwieldy and large and hard to manage sometimes. So what's your experience in the challenges that the other technical items bring to your job?
Well, I mean, I definitely deal with that during rehearsals, but then during the show, I generally am calling. So that is usually left to my assistant. But yeah, I mean, I have to know where all the set changes are, where all the costume changes are, because so usually Davis is backstage to help with costume changes, which is very helpful because I don't often know how to dress them in whatever they're wearing. I don't know what to do with this corset. So that is usually super helpful. But then a lot of my job is figuring out, how does this scene change work, and who does it, and is it done mostly by the singers, or is it done mostly by, like, is my ASM costumed, and is she or he are they running around with the actors and they look like they're part of the ensemble? I don't know that answered your question.
Well, I think what you're getting into is how much of the organization comes into. I mean, Peter can design the set, he can show you how it comes apart and everything, but in the end, it's still your responsibility to really figure out and make sure that the set in the run of the show gets changed correctly, gets changed safely, and you really have to plan that out kind of second by second or piece by piece, and organize that pretty heavily. Also, even though Davis may be doing the costume change, you may have to let them know where that can happen safely, which side of the stage it can happen on, and maybe have a space that costume change can happen where it is private, so that someone can undress without the whole cast viewing that. So a lot of it has to do with organization, right?
Yeah, there was a time, I don't even remember, we were using a gazebo, but I don't remember which show that was in. Merry
Widow, sorry.
Merry Widow. And a bunch of things were coming on and off, and so then after the scene would actually start, we would be taking this gazebo as quietly as possible and rolling it over this huge drop like this, in between where the stage is and where backstage is. And so that was always fun, because maybe this time we're gonna mess up and it's gonna go over really loudly, and then everyone will hear it. So
luckily, I don't believe there was a time that you all messed up.
I don't think so, but
Speaking of Merry Widow, I have the trailer that we utilized to advertise that show, and that was the largest set we had ever had on the stage of one of our productions. And so I want to take a quick look at that trailer and then talk a little bit about the technical elements of that show. Let's take a look at that. Just watching that and getting the memories from that, there's so many things I remember that went well and so many things that went wrong, including an actor who was in a boot because he had foot surgery after we cast him and before we opened the show. So all kinds of interesting things that created for us to have to problem solve. Problem solving is a huge part of being in the technical area of what we do. Davis, talk a little bit about what it was like to create the world of the Merry Widow, which takes place in a country that doesn't even exist, right?
Correct, it doesn't. But thanks to you, we had a time period. So based off of that, and the world that it was set in, it was just a whole lavish, decadent palace and, surroundings that it really, for me, it was wonderful because I got to work with all these wonderful, just vibrant fabrics and colors and floral appliques and hair pieces and hats. And, it really was one of the best shows to costume, just because of being able to have almost a freedom of design element when it came to, putting together the costumes for each one of the girls. The three wives that were in there were the best because we just happened to come across fabric in three different colors, but all had the same polka dot design. So it kind of was this rivalry between the three of them to see who could have them. It was all the same fabric, but we're gonna outdo the next one by, I'm gonna do a different hair piece for her because she wants to stand out. She wants to be over the top, or do bigger hair on one of them just because, she wants that. She's the shortest of the three and wants to add that height to make herself look bigger and taller. And, it really was just a wonderful experience just for the lushness of the fabrics alone.
This is a picture of the three wives that you're talking about, right?
Correct.
Awesome. I also have a picture of you dressing the Mayor of Loveland.
That is correct. That show, we were very fortunate to have the mayor come in and do a cameo role for us.
Now she's wearing an interesting hat. Where did that hat come from, Davis?
Fortunately, we are very fortunate and able to, we make all of the hats. That was specifically designed for her based off of her costume and the fictional town that they were from. So we designed that hat based off of her costume, and which allowed it to tie in from top to bottom for her.
Peter, talk to me a little bit more about, this show has grand group scenes. It also has these very small, intimate scenes on this huge set. What is it like to light a scene where there's this beautiful love duet happening on this massive set on the stage?
Having to get to work on different stages, from small, which is the alto, to very large. It's been interesting to find out that you often don't have enough room regardless of what size of the theater. I did a production of Secret Garden, and we really had very little space to move sets on and off at one for concert hall, which is huge. I bring that up because I see these pictures and I'm reminded, and it's always amazing to me from an audience perspective. Things look one way, and then when you step up on stage and you realize the depth of the stage is only about 12 feet, and then you put that huge embassy on there with all those people, it's quite a small space up there to act and dance and that. But with the stage being small as well, at the Rialto, the difficulty there is it's difficult to pinpoint certain sections. The Rialto, at least at that time, didn't have great follow spots. They often made the actors look like they were deer in headlights. And I know you as a director do not like follow spots. So it's quite difficult to, musical theater, if it's something show busy, works great. But I sort of can understand that it kind of can take you out of being in the scene with the actors, that all of a sudden the world kind of changes with that. But you asked the question, what is it like to try and do that? It's difficult, again, because one, there aren't enough lights to really, you have to make every light be, cover a wide variety of uses. So to narrow it down is difficult. I often, as we were talking earlier, I'll often run the lights for the performances. So I have the ability within each rehearsal and even within each successive performance, I'm editing lights to try and just make that vision a little bit tighter. Just as Davis was talking about the details of costumes and trim and texture and fabric and all that, I at least get the ability to kind of continue to work with that through Tech Week without causing any more cost to the production. But at the Rialto, it's difficult.
So Peter, I want to see, this is from a production of Kismet that we did. And in addition to the lighting giving atmosphere and color, we can also set the scene in having a sense of what might be above the performers. So in this, we were in a garden and we wanted this sense that there were lush trees above the performers. How did you create that look in the lighting here?
Well, picture you can see a pattern on the back shaft, and theatrically I'd call it gobo. It's just a metal, a piece of metal with patterns cut out. There are thousands of them out in the world. You can get custom and that sort of thing. And so to create dappled sunlight or even just texture on the set, you do that with something called a gobo, is how we got that. You also see it on the actors as you would wander through a dappled glen or something like that. Then color is important with the lovely soft lavenders and what turquoise and blue greens and that of the costumes really lended itself to that garden setting.
So Davis, as we were talking about creating the atmosphere, we did a production of The Merry Wives of Windsor, which is a Shakespeare play that Otto Nicolai took and put into operatic form. And as we were conceptualizing the piece, I decided that we wanted to set it in the 50s, and you encouraged, because of the look, that we look at the late 50s and kind of inspired by some of the recent TV shows and kind of pop culture that had started to become very interested in the look of the late 50s. And so we ended up setting it in that time period. But one of the things that was very important to me was that the chorus not just be these random people, but that we really get a sense that they're just the normal people from the town that would have interacted with these characters. And so we have everything from the milkman to the town nun or / school teacher and stuff. And you helped to create all of those different wonderful characters. Let's take a quick look at a video from that production, and then let's talk about how you helped to create that world.
Hey, servant, stop! What's going on? Tricks will have you caught.
So Davis, tell me a little bit about that world that we created in that production.
So I'm obsessed with the 1950s. I love the cut of the clothes, the fabrics that were used, the shapes, everybody looked put together. One of my favorite things about that scene is if you were, got the chance to actually see it, or even from that video, you can kind of go through and you can pick out certain people and certain professions that were very prominent and popular during that time. One of my favorite ones is, the director gave me the opportunity to throw in a Pan Am stewardess. I mean, it was the start of the jet age, and that was a huge thing. So you see that iconic blue uniform out front. You kind of see that in the back, the red fitted dress that's of the office manager. So we kind of created this world. One of the actresses was we had her dressed as a schoolmarm. We'd created this backstory for her that she had lost her love in the war and had never progressed. We actually, even to help fuel the story along, went and found a picture in an antique store of a gentleman in a uniform from the 40s, and she carried it with her in her school book that she carried around. We had the old school telephone operator that came through with the sweater over his shoulders with the sweater clip and the headset on that you used. One of the best compliments that I've ever received was based off of this show, and it was based off of the character in the blue dress. An older gentleman came up to me after the show and said to me, he had watched it, and in the opening, she comes out of the front door and has a young child that's riding on a hobby horse, the horse on a stick. And she came out dressed just like that. And he came up to me, he said, he still remembers to this day when he would go off to school, that's what his mother looked like when she walked him out the door. So it was real important for him to be able to see that we represented that era perfectly, because it brought up a wonderful childhood memory of him and his mother and how she would send him off to school every day, perfectly coiffed hair, makeup on, fresh dress pressed, and that's how she sent him on his day, and how he would return in the afternoon to her looking like that. So for us, for a costumer to receive a compliment like that, it's tremendous, because it means you've done your job perfectly to represent the era that y'all were going for as far as the time period. It really was just a really big compliment that I had done my job well enough to evoke such a wonderful memory for him and to remember his mother that way.
So Lexi, as we talk about all of these elements and how they help people to be transformed into a world, one of the things that can untransform someone in a world is things going wrong in stage productions. So how do you, as the stage manager, work to try to, I mean, it's live theater, so things are gonna go wrong, but how do you help to minimize that so that the audience can live in this world that's being created on the stage for them?
Well, the really boring answer is that I create a lot of paperwork to double check everything. So that's another one of our main jobs, is to create the paperwork to make sure that everything is in its proper place. And then, I mean, as far as getting dressed, like, it's kind of on each singer to get themselves dressed, because, I mean, Davis checks you as you go out the door, but I have no idea. So, unless someone is trying to go on stage without their hairpiece, I'm probably not going to catch it if it's the wrong outfit.
But also call times and making sure that people are aware they're supposed to be at the right times is an important part of your job too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in like a bigger opera house, the stage manager would give calls to the dressing rooms, and I've done that before, for big ensemble numbers, giving a call to the dressing room, okay, you should get down here now. But yeah, I mean, it's, everyone has their call time. It's usually an hour before the show to an hour and a half before the show, depending on hair and makeup, and they get earlier call times for wigs and things. And yeah, just making sure everyone is in their place and ready to go.
Peter, what is your favorite part of what you do to create these worlds for audiences? What do you love about it?
Wow. That is a really great question. I certainly love being creative. I mean, that seems like a dumb statement, but I think we all do something that gives us something internally about what we do. For the Loveland Opera Theatre, the same as when I get to conduct performances wherever they are. It's for Loveland Opera Theatre where my position is, I've got the best seat in the house because I'm part of the show, but I'm also part of the audience. I get to be right out there with the energy of the audience. And so what's coming, whether it's your work or anyone else's work, and it's just great to share that. So I really would say that the best part for me is sharing and being part of that with our audience.
Awesome. Davis, one of our awesome accomplishments, in my opinion, happened 2 seasons ago in 2019, our last season. That was the picture that Juliana is on our production of Così fan tutte. The picture that Juliana is sitting in front of is a recreation of Georges Seurat's The Afternoon of the Grand Jatte, the famous painting from the early 1900s, and you recreated all of the major kind of forefront characters from that painting and put them on stage, including matching the colors of their clothing and the parasols and everything that they had. What was it like to recreate famous paintings in our production of Così?
Believe it or not, it was actually harder to do that than it is to come up and design something on your own. And very much for the reason what you just said, matching colors, matching parasols, matching hats, matching, the curve of a pipe that somebody's holding. It's so much harder to do it that way because, especially in this show, the paintings we used were so well known. You wanted it to be as authentic as possible. And on some level, it's almost more difficult to do that kind of design than it is to design, say, the show that we'd like, The Merry Wives of Windsor or The Merry Widow. It was wonderful because, fortunately, Seurat's one of my favorite artists, and to be able to, for Loveland to be able to give me the opportunity to recreate that painting and some of the other ones was fantastic. But it really was, it stretched my ability to search for fabrics and trims and things like that. You'd be amazed. Some of the fabrics up there are drapery curtains that I bought. Some of it is, I'll be the first one to admit I've torn other costumes apart because it had a piece of lace that I needed that matched perfectly to one of the costumes for that show. So you get creative and hopes that you've matched the color and the design perfectly for that painting. It really was a challenge, which was great because sometimes the run of the mill, you just kind of you want that challenge. You don't want that, we're creating another bustle dress or we're creating another hoop skirt. This really stretches your abilities to get everything right.
I want to show a little of the opening of that show. The concept was that we were in a museum that showed impressionist paintings, and then that museum, as the security guard turned off the lights and locked up, came to life. And so this is the very first time we'll see the security guard closing up, and we'll see the piece coming to life. But I want you to not only take in the brilliance of Davis's costume when the first character pops up, but listen to the audience, the surprise of the audience as we recreated this painting live on stage. the actors did a brilliant job of acting out that scene. I can't imagine that scene without the technical elements, without the people moving set pieces on and off, without the lighting, Peter. I mean, the timing of the lighting in that scene was just, it had to be perfect for it to work right. And then, of course, the transformation of recreating that barmaid costume exactly so that we knew immediately when she popped up that she had come out of the painting. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like to recreate all of that.
Well, I'll say my job actually, I think, was quite the easiest part of it, because oftentimes all the lighting cues, once they are created by the lighting designer, are called by the stage manager. And the lighting board operator just pushes the button on their call. So sometimes there's too many cues, and the stage manager will just have the lighting operator take cues on their own. But that's an awful, every single one of those disappearances on the screen needed to be called to the music, I believe, and the lighting to the music. And that's a lot of cues for a stage manager. So my job was easy. I just sat there and pushed a button.
Lexi, can you explain what it's like to call cues and what cues are?
I think it's such a rush. Like, to me, it's the same thing as being on stage. Calling a show and calling it right is so much fun for me. And so I am always a person who asks designers for, not necessarily in operas, but asks for as many cues as I can possibly have because it's so much fun. And
so what kind of cues do you call during an opera?
So I call all of the lighting cues, anything that is anything that was on the screen. So we had like a separate operator who controlled the LED screen. And then sound kind of does their own things because there aren't usually sound cues in an opera. But usually operas tend to be a little less, I don't know, the ones that we've done, it tends to be a little less precise always. And so it's like, you know, we want to light up this part of the stage for when this person walks over here. But this one was so much fun because it was more precise. We had to call things exactly on the music. And then the effect it produced was phenomenal and so much fun to watch and hear the audience reaction.
Tell me something that has happened on stage, backstage, that is a kind of an epitome of kind of the joy and the crazy chaos of creating theater or an opera.
So it's a little different than theater for me, because usually for theater I would be in a booth or not backstage. So I call the show from backstage, which means that I am left like I am there to be grabbed in any emergency, which is a good and a bad thing, because sometimes I go, Peter, there's an emergency, take the light cues. And luckily I can do that because Peter designed them and knows where they go, and you know, I don't have to do anything with that. Or I'll turn away to address something and Peter will go, I took this light cue for you. And that's always super helpful. But I do remember, I don't remember what was happening, but I think during an understudy performance for Merry Widow, our understudy came downstairs and she was having a problem with her wig and she was like freaking out and crying, and I had to kind of like give her to my ASM because I was still calling the show.
Jump in. Your toes, right?
Oh yes, yeah.
All right, just a couple more questions. Davis, what is an atmosphere, a time period, a setting that you haven't gotten to do yet that hopefully we will see on the Loveland Opera stage in the next 5 years?
I really love the 1850s and the 1860s. I'm a sucker for a full skirt. I love, you know, just the voluminous skirts and just the fabrics, the amount of fabrics it takes, just the volume of them is one of my favorites to do. My other favorite is the Georgian era. I love, you know, the Marie Antoinette, the Baroque, the big hip buckets and the panniers and the stomachers and, you know, the whole over the top, extravagant Versailles look. I mean, I'm just a sucker for that. It's just something about being able to design those and to see them on stage. It's really something special.
And Peter, what is your hope as we move out of COVID and hopefully within the next year start to get back to doing more live performances for live audiences? What's your hope both in what we've learned through technology and through COVID, and where do you want to see us head as we continue to create art and take into account what we have learned?
Well, my hope is that we all get to do what we love doing, which really is not totally fulfilled unless we have a live audience. We can stream all we want. It's just not the same. As someone once told me, if it was meant to be seen over and over again, it'd be called a movie. We do live theater. I hope that as everyone comes back online, they will take advantage and support everyone by attending as many shows as possible. And I think it's a great opportunity to sample so many things that are going to be just kind of bursting back into the scene that maybe you've never given them a thought before, or I don't like this. I do remember I had season tickets at the Denver Center, and they had a show, they had a Patsy Cline show. Well, it was part of the season ticket, so we already paid for it, and we were almost going to cancel, but we went because we thought country western music. The show was just awesome. Thoroughly enjoyed it, wanted to go back. In fact, I've done several Patsy Cline shows since then. So I think this is a great time to come back and just come back in full force and bring everyone and see everyone's work.
Awesome. Juliana, I'm going to give you the last word before I do my commercial. Can you help the audience help our audience understand, you get to watch the rehearsal process where the actors are learning their staging and getting solidified in their music together. And then there's that moment where we move into the theater and all the tech elements start to come in. Can you describe and help our audience understand what is that like to see that moment where we go from a bunch of plain clothed singers and performers to all of a sudden adding all the technical elements in the theater?
Well, in the beginning of, the first couple of rehearsals in the theater, a little bit chaotic. And I think the singers were just trying to find their way on the stage, and all the elements were trying to pull together, and it's a start and stop process. One little piece goes up and then the next piece goes up. And to watch it in stages is really fun. And then finally you get to about the third dress rehearsal and everything clicks. And then it's just magic. It really is. It's magic because it all comes together and you've created something beautiful together. So I always wait for that magic moment to happen and I get thrilled to death.
Awesome. Well, I want to say a big thank you to all of you. Before we go, I do have to do a small commercial, and that is to let people know that Loveland Opera is alive and well during this COVID time. We have so many ways that you can engage with us online, including this vlog, as we had our first vlog premiere last month, and that is available on our YouTube channel. But also Peter mentioned our Rodgers and Hammerstein Jubilee, which was a fantastic partnership we did with the Rialto Theater, and that is available on our YouTube page. And then we also, through the entire pandemic, we were one of the first companies to start with online, having online content, and we had a number of our singers perform beautiful concerts as part of our virtual concert series. So we hope you will just click onto one of our other YouTube videos and check out all of the things that Loveland Opera Theater has been doing online that has kept our artists alive, our singers alive during during this time when they haven't had a lot of work. And then I hope you will take Peter's advice. And as we continue to look forward and plan towards live performances in the future, that you'll go and spend your money and see the great art that's being created in Colorado. And I hope one of those places you'll go to is Loveland Opera Theater, as we continue to figure out how we will be moving forward in the next year with our performances. Thank you so much to every one of you for being with us today and for helping us just learn a little bit more about what it's like to be backstage at the opera. It's probably the part that people know the least about, but it's also sometimes the part they want to know the most about, because there is something magical about what you do. And we're so grateful that although you sometimes don't get to come on the stage and take the bow with the performers, that you know that your work is so heavily appreciated. And as I said, if it's done well, we may not even notice that it's there, but it is really adds so much to our performances. So thank you for your hard work.